Welcome back to Left Ahead, where you matter. So, Ellen DeGeneres made headlines a few weeks ago by exposing herself as an unconditional defender of the wealthy class in her defense of George W. Bush. Now, I'm not here to recap that whole event because that headline went in and out of the news cycle already, but what I am here to do is to provide some key takeaways on that event based on the overwhelmingly positive reaction that it got. So, first and foremost, being friends with George W. Bush is not in any way, shape, or form the same thing as being friends with people who choose to wear fur. For one, there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. People's personal shopping choices shouldn't be scrutinized. The economic system that allows for fur coats to hang in stores in the first place should be scrutinized. Second, it would be completely irrational for a vegan person to only have vegan friends, or for an atheist to exclusively have atheist friends. That is such a patronizing analogy to make on her part. By equivocating George Bush's history with wearing fur, Ellen is minimizing the crimes of a monster. A monster who instructed the murder of 1 million Iraqis, including 150,000 Iraqi civilians. Now, take a second and let that really sink in. 150,000 civilians. 10 packed football stadiums. That's the amount of blood that George Bush's hands are soaked in. All because of a war started over this man's lies that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. A cut and dry false flag operation that's been widely documented. This man should trigger a Pavlovian response to gag every time you see his face. He should be sent to rot behind bars for the rest of his life for his war crimes. But that's not how things work around here. Instead, since neoliberals have the attention span of goldfish, we forget the war crimes he committed. We forgive him. And we befriend him. How many of those 150,000 civilians that he killed have family members? What would you do if your family was murdered by an imperialist force that lied its way into your backyard? Maybe you would be overwhelmed and kill yourself. Maybe you would lose all your sanity. Maybe you would take up arms. That is how the world got ISIS. Aside from the global instability that George W. Bush caused, we should not rewrite his history on LGBT issues. Back in 2004, he called for an amendment to the Constitution which would ban same-sex marriage. As president, he appointed 2 judges, and they were right-wing judges who held anti-gay judicial philosophies. Remember, gay marriage was barely legalized back in 2015 in a 5-4 Supreme Court ruling. John Roberts and Samuel Alito, the 2 judges who George Bush appointed, were 2 of the 4 who voted against it. Now, Ellen DeGeneres, despite being a member of the gay community, is excusing his bigoted views because, truth be told, she doesn't have to face the real hardships for her identity that less privileged members of the community have to face. The greatest privilege in America is not being white, male, cisgendered, or heterosexual. It's being wealthy. Now, don't get me wrong, all these preceding descriptors are huge privileges and they're right below on the list. This is all evidenced by the LGBT community being victims of higher rates of harassment and hate crimes and murder, etc. However, in a society where wealth equals power, anyone with enough money can circumvent the problems that their marginalized identity will create. Ellen doesn't have to walk around riddled with anxiety the same way that a working-class trans woman does, because she has the extreme privilege of living in a $15 million house in Beverly Hills. Standing up against George Bush's views would make her a class traitor, and she would never jeopardize solidarity with the wealthy class. Thank you for watching. Sources and Patreon are down below.